Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning, right here on Channels Television. Thank God it's Friday. I guess we should say that, even though every day is special. But today, let's do Friday business as usual, starting from the global space, telling you what's happening with oil prices. It eased just a bit, but held near a one-month high today, as it's heading for a third weekly gain on a tightening global supply outlook after the U.S. imposed tariffs against countries buying oil from Venezuela and also placed curbs on Iranian oil trade. So for this morning, Brent lost 14 cents. That's about 0.2%, at $73.89 a barrel. WTI also went down the same percentage, but it's at $69.80 a barrel. Now, the moves were minor compared to the gains of over 2% for both contracts so far this week. They're up more than 7% since hitting multi-month lows in early March. The main driver of price rally at this time has been the shifting landscape of global oil sanctions. This is observation by analysts in the global oil space. U.S. President Donald Trump had announced a new 25% tariff on potential buyers of Venezuelan crude oil days after U.S. sanctions targets China imports from Iran. And oil was also underpinned by signs of better demand in the U.S., which is the world's top oil consumer, as the country's crude stocks fell more than anticipated. Data also from the Energy Information Administration has shown that U.S. crude inventories fell by 3.3 million barrels to 433.6 million barrels in the week ended March 21. That's compared to analysts had expected about 956,000 barrels draw. And well, we'll see what happens around there with the peace talks also affecting, or a major factor of bringing in Russian oil into the global oil space. Let's come here to Nigeria, where the Finance Minister and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, and EU Ambassador, they have met in Abuja to discuss EU's 1.3 billion euro investment in Nigeria, focusing on trade, infrastructure, and green finance. The minister highlights that the EU's role as Nigeria's top trading partner and is calling for structured trade dialogue. The meeting also reviewed European Bank for Reconstruction and Development as the EBRD's involvement and Global Gateway Investment Strategy. Mr. Edu welcomes the investment, reaffirming Nigeria's commitment to economic reforms, investor-friendly policies, and a project 4.6% GDP growth by the end of 2025. Well, everyone is still celebrating the women, at least in March. As part of activities marking International Women's Month, the Central Bank of Nigeria has reaffirmed its commitment to gender inclusion in the financial sector, highlighting the increasing presence of female leaders in top positions across banks and regulatory bodies. Speaking at a grand finale of International Women's Day commemoration at the CBN headquarters, the governor of the Apex Bank, Mr. Olaimi Kadoso, is emphasizing the strides women have made in Nigeria's banking industry, noting that the number of female managing directors in financial institutions is at an all-time high. For International Women's Day 2025, the UN theme for all women and girls' rights, equality, empowerment, calling for action to unlock equal rights, power, and opportunities for all, with a focus on empowering the next generation. According to Mr. Cardoso, the CBN is proud to be a part of this global movement, where women make up about 35% of present directors, and 3 out of 7 non-executive board members are women. And he said this is a feat he's proud to be part of. Away from that, the Senate has moved to stop the planned $1 billion sale of Lafarge Cement PLC to China's Singh Cement, citing national security and economic risks. Senator Shuaib Salisu of Ogun Central is asking the Bureau of Public Procurement to suspend the deal until a full review is conducted. Lafarge Cement is a key player in Nigeria's construction sector, and lawmakers fear that foreign control could lead to capital flights, job losses, and weakened industry regulation. Mr. Salisu warns that Nigeria must not lose control of a key economic sector to foreign investors while local players face restrictions. He's asking for policies that prioritize national interests and economic sovereignty. The National Pension Commission, PENCOM, has launched a new pension contribution remittance system, an automated platform designed to enhance the accuracy, efficiency, and transparency of pension contributions into employees' retirement savings accounts. According to a statement signed by the Commission's management, the initiative, developed in collaboration with the Pensions Operators Association of Nigeria, aims to resolve long-standing issues related to uncredited pension contributions and verification delays. The newly introduced system mandates that all employers remit pension contributions through approved payment solution service providers, PSSPS. The Commission explains that these PSSPS will validate employees' personal identification numbers and pension fund administrators with PENCOM's database before processing payment, ensuring that pension contributions are accurately credited. PENCOM expresses concerns over the growing number of uncredited pension contributions, which often result from incomplete or inaccurate documentation from employers. This, they say, prevented PFAS from crediting employees' accounts, potentially affecting their retirement plans. The Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria has announced a reform in taxation education through its examination system. According to a statement, the new examination system is set to take effect from April 2025. The revised syllabus is tailored to align with international taxation standards, ensuring that candidates acquire the technical and analytical skills necessary for evolving tax profession. The introduction of CBE comes with several advantages, they say, and is designed to improve efficiency, accessibility, and security in the examination process. The Institute highlights key benefits of digital examination formats, including increased efficiency through faster marking and result processing, improved accessibility with designated centers nationwide, and alignment with global best practices for a more structured assessment. Well, more earnings coming on now from especially the banking sector. Today we have Ecobank Transnational Incorporated. They've reported a profit of 735.9 billion naira for the 2024 full year results. So we have their profit after tax at 735.9 billion, and that's up 179%. Gross earnings also went up more than 100% at 4.22 trillion naira. Revenue also up 133%, and total assets increased by 67%. And then operating profit before impairment charges also went up 138% to 1.46 trillion naira from 615.9 billion naira. And they've also reported expansion in financial position, and they say that the increase was fueled by customer deposits, loan growth, and a boost in investment securities. And the International Monetary Fund has appointed the founder and group chair of Hess Holdings, Mr. Tony Elumelu, to its Advisory Council on Entrepreneurship and Growth, convened by the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva. Hess Holding, we know, well, they advocate for entrepreneurship, and the foundation has mentored and trained over 25,000 African entrepreneurs since 2015. They champion entrepreneurship as the engine for economic transformation for the continent, not just for Nigeria. The Advisory Council comprises global business leaders, policymakers, and academics dedicated to identifying and addressing regulatory barriers to entrepreneurship, and its mandate is to recommend policies that enhance resource allocation, stimulate innovation, and catalyze sustainable private sector-led economic growth. Mr. Elumelu will be instrumental in ensuring that Africa's entrepreneurial potential is central to global economic policy making. Well, we say Congratulations to Mr. Ilumelu, and of course, to whom much is given, much is obviously expected. Now let's take a break, and when we come back, an interesting conversation going on in the House of Representatives. Of course, the Constitution Amendment. Which one concerns business? You'll find out in a moment after this break. To stay with us. Welcome back. Yes, it's still Business Morning, and that's a conversation about what's going on in the House of Representatives. We know that a bill for an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999 to include citizenship by investment as one of the classes of citizenship in Nigeria, that has scaled through second reading at the House of Representatives. This is not new in the world. I mean, even recently we had President Trump. He offered, I think, about $500 million for citizenship. But let's find out how it could look like in Nigeria and what it could do or mean for Nigerians. And joining us right here in the studio is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Timeline Consult Limited, Mr. Shoaib Idris. Good morning, Mr. Idris, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, madam, and thank you for having me.
Great. So I'm sure you've been following the conversation. I mean, the House of Reps has been very busy. A lot of proposed amendment to the Constitution. But I mean, we just pick on this since this is a business show. Well, this is a common concept. A lot of countries, even the Caribbeans, they offer this as citizenship for investment. One would have thought, oh, how come we haven't thought of that in Nigeria before now, you know? Is it because we really don't need it? Or what do you think about the concept generally for Nigeria?
I think in general, the concept is an excellent idea. It's a very good initiative. The world over, citizens of one country require certain level of latitude and privileges that they will want to possibly get, but if they are just coming from one particular country, then they don't get such privileges or opportunities. Remember, historically, we are coming from a position where we were not allowed to even own a second citizenship. So if you are a Nigerian, you can't become, for example, a Ghanaian or a British citizen, so you have to live with one citizenship. So we moved up from that position to allow citizens to have multiple, at least dual citizenship. So I think this is a step in the right direction, and it's something that is commendable, and it's not peculiar to the Caribbean. You know, the European Union member countries, some of them are having such kind of opportunities. The golden visa, for example, in Spain or Portugal or other European countries are also available. Recently, as recent as 1 or 2 years ago, Namibia started this in Africa. So I think it's something that it's long overdue for us in Nigeria.
So I guess the next thing would be, what can we put in place so it's not abused, or it's specific, it's customized to the needs of Nigeria? Because one of the reasons for this is attracting foreign investment, or at least foreign funds, So what can be put in place to safeguard the Nigerian identity or citizenship, but still get what the objective is?
You see, madam, we need to be a little careful. This country is one of the most beautiful countries on planet Earth. Is it climate? We have one of the best climate. Is it population? In Africa, we are talking of 250 million, people with a reasonable level of disposable income. Is it arable land? Is it mineral resources? Name it. So people will naturally be looking forward to wanting to come to Nigeria. But then, when you come as a foreigner, there are certain restrictions that you may not be able to get. Imagine the news item you had a couple of minutes ago where the House of Representatives is asking the Bureau for Public Enterprises to stop further processing of the sale of Lafarge to a Chinese entity. Assuming that the owners of that Chinese entity are ready to take up citizenship in Nigeria, will that have been stopped? Certainly no. So yes, it's a good development, but when you are asking what kind of conditions one should put, there are a number of systems, mechanisms that other countries have implemented. One is you invest either in real estate and you wait for about 3 to 5 years before you get back your funds, or you contribute money to the national endowment fund of the country so that you are allowed to become a citizen, which means, for example, we can put a condition that anyone who is ready to contribute, say, $500 million, to say our sovereign wealth fund, that person can easily become a citizen within a certain period of time, which then will tinker with the current situation where a number of citizens are allowed to apply to become Nigerian citizens subject to 1 or 2 conditions, one of which is longevity of stay in the country, and then your ability to speak a number of languages, 1 or more language of the Nigerian community. So if you tinker with that, and then you have such condition, and we strictly implement such condition, we will certainly be having a successful program along those lines.
I like the way you emphasize strictly implement, because I mean that seems to be one of the things. But before we even get there, so we've seen, as you mentioned, real estate seems to be one area, one sector that a lot of countries give the condition for if you want to do investment for citizenship. When you look at our peculiarities as Nigeria, what sectors do you think should be prioritized for? I mean, assuming this has scaled through, and this will be all part of it in the lawmaking. I guess that's why we're having the conversation now. What sectors and what amount or area of contribution should these foreigners be allowed to participate in to ensure that the economy makes the best, use of it?
Well, because we are talking of citizenship by investment, which means we are talking about natural person, individuals. Now, an individual ordinarily, will have some level of limitations in terms of the quantum of amount of money he or she may be able to invest in Nigeria. Other than that, I would have said 2, 3, or 4, key areas of our economy requires, critical level of investment, almost ASAP, as soon as possible. Number 1, our infrastructure, be it rail network, roads network, is it electricity, is it water? This area should be a priority in terms of attracting investment. Number 2, very closely related to that, is area of, say, agriculture. This country can conveniently feed Africa and, in fact, feed the world, because we are talking about 950,000 square kilometers of landmass that Nigeria has, and much of it is arable land. Why wouldn't we, say, be into agriculture that we can feed the world? Third on that, pedestal is solid minerals development. This country, again, is blessed with enormous amount of mineral resources that are yet to be, tapped. If only that we can get maximum amount of investment or massive investment, believe me sincerely, madam, we will generate enormous amount of revenue, and then create employment opportunities, thereby helping the less privileged, or the children that we have, close to about 35 million Nigerians that have finished one form of certification in education or another, and they don't have job. So the more investment we attract, the better we are able to create jobs, the better we are able to expand our economy, the better we are able to fight poverty, and the better we are able to reduce, insecurity in the situation, because these three have nexus, they are connected. And I'm sure you will know that I didn't mention real estate, because I didn't think that we should even go that route, because real estate really does not create as much employment opportunities as we will want to, to have in the country.
So that takes me back to what you said before now, strict implementation of it, because we've seen some very beautiful policies and documentation. When it comes to the implementation or even the strict implementation of it, we see abuse. So how do you think, perhaps, this law is said, okay, we follow what you have said, areas of agriculture, we want to attract these citizens to come in and look at the area of infrastructure, agriculture, for instance. Who should manage it? How could it be managed to at least reduce abuse and make it impactful? How do you see that happening?
I think the best way to manage this, if it eventually sees the light of the day, is to have a commission, is to have an agency that should be staffed with quality, human capital that will implement the thought process behind, the law. Most of these countries that are, having this kind of scheme, they have what they call citizenship by investment unit. So it is a standalone department that is managed usually under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that way you are able to make sure that you manage nuances. And the quantum of screening that goes through. I happen to know about, one of these process, Antigua and Barbuda Island, and a number of them, Grenada. You go through what they call background checks. They check about your lifestyle, the countries you have visited, whether you were ever denied visa in one country or another, why were you denied. So there are security checks, there are financial checks to make sure that your source of income is, untainted, is not drug money or proceeds of corruption or other, vices. So there has to be a commission that should be well staffed with financial expert, security expert, legal expert, diplomat, so that way every aspect of, a man's life who might be wanting to come in and enjoy our commonwealth will be thoroughly and squarely, scrutinized before eventually approval is given. And I think such approval should be made to be not just by one individual, maybe a bit of a committee that will recommend, say, to the Council of State or Council of Ministers, but not just say to allow Mr. President or say a minister to approve that. Those kind of checks and balances can reduce the possibility of infractions.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. It's gone through second reading in the House of Representatives. I think the Senate hasn't even started working on that. So we'll see how that goes. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, Mr. Shoaib Idris, the Managing Director of Timeline Consult Limited.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Yeah. All right, now the 2025 Afro-Caribbean Investment Summit has ended in Abuja with a commitment from representatives of the two continents to improve ties and increase investment. The Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Terence Drew, reflected on the significance of the summit and reaffirms his commitment to turn the dialogue into development.
For 3 days, representatives from across Africa and the Caribbean discuss how to boost investment and economic opportunities between both continents. The discussion focused on the abundant resources and the opportunities that exist between the two regions.
Do not be bogged down in bureaucracy. Get things done. Cross-border trade is now going through seismic changes. with the policies from America, the tariffs like the Prime Minister mentioned yesterday, you need to think out of the box.
In their closing address, the vision for stronger mutually beneficial ties between Africa and the Caribbean is outlined.
There are conversations already happening between our governments. There are conversations that will happen today and tomorrow between the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and large business owners, because we understand that government and business is what makes the difference. 2 days ago, I said this is the beginning of our future. Today, we are in that future. We can only continue from here.
This summit must not just be about history, emotions, and feelings. It must be about tangible benefits, and it must continue with impact, with us investing in each other. Indeed, we came here to connect. But beyond the smiles and the handshake, we have witnessed in an investment in ideas, exploration of industries, knowledge shared across disciplines, culture celebrated in its richness and relevance, and above all, the advancement of our people, our efforts, and our purpose. This summit reminded us that the economic and social potential between Africa and the Caribbean is no abstract. It is tangible, executable, and inevitable.
The meeting ends with an insightful call for enhanced economic collaboration, cultural reconnection, and joint innovation between Africa and the Caribbean. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
Well, that was a 3-day summit that ended yesterday. And remember, we did host the ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis on Business Morning last week. A whole lot happening there now. But talking about food security, yesterday we talked about how women contribute about 75% of food production in Nigeria, and yet access to loan just about 10%. Now, the federal government is calling for European investment into Nigeria's cold chain infrastructure as part of a broader strategy to address food insecurity. Let's talk about that for a moment. And we have right here President of She Farmers Initiative, Temitope Andy, here right here. Good morning, Ms. Andy. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Amy. Thank you for having me.
So I guess you've been busy since the last time we talked. Seeing that we're celebrating women, we discovered that access to loan is still a major one, in spite of the fact that women contribute a huge part of food production as well as small businesses. Most of the small businesses are run by women. For you in agriculture, in the agriculture sector, has the situation improved? Access to loans? The government is talking about large-scale farming now, mechanized farming. Has your experience improved?
Well, I think what the government has done is actually to scale up food production for sustainability. However, the active participants in that sector are women, and they are in the rural areas, majority of them. Access to finance inclusion, financial inclusion for them is still very low. However, for she farmers, what we've tried to achieve is creating a strong community through cooperative. I've realized that the cooperative is a strong channel for the women to be able to access loans from even the commercial banks and also development banks. So, and for food security as well, the women also need to cluster together. It's no longer business as usual. It will be difficult in this current dispensation to find a Lone Ranger farmer, a woman alone, doing business of agriculture. In the first instance, she's not likely to get funding from the bank. But when you come together, you create a strong community, you create a cluster and a strong cooperative, the bank will also come looking for you. Because the bank is also looking for a comfort to secure the funding. And most times, the bank, the agric sector of the bank are not technically knowledgeable to be able to give funding directly. But with the comfort of a cooperative of a group, you know, it's easy to access funding. So in She Farmers, what we've identified is the strength of cooperative to build a very strong community in aggregating funding. And funding is a game of numbers. Let's say we have 10,000 members, and each member is contributing, let's say 10,000 every month. That's a lot of sum. We have that money. We can go to a development bank and request for equity funding. With equity funding, we can fund our women ourselves.
So
we have
does it
become
reduce...
our farms ourselves, our banks ourselves.
Because yesterday, I had a guest here who had been in the banking for about 20 years, she said, before she left. And she did rule out some requirements which make it difficult for women to access funds, especially collateral, and then you connect it to the culture and, you know, all the family connections and all of that. So when you go as a cooperative, do you have a different set of requirements that make it easier for cooperatives to access this fund?
Yes, as a cooperative, the bank already knows you're coming in a group, and you also have your own financial strength. So they know you have your funding, and they know you have a proper structure that they can rely on. So that makes it easier to access.
So what kind
funding.
of requirements are you asked for you to access? For instance, the collateral, which is a major
The major
one.
requirement is the cooperative will put up a pen to say, oh, I guarantee this person. On most instances, let's say, for instance, for us, we cluster to cultivate maybe like 200 acres of farmland for cassava. We have our technical partners. We've looked at the beginning and the end of the transaction. We know this is how much we need, and we know we have our off-takers, or probably we're adding value to it to sell to a particular client. We take that to them. They have seen the way out of the transaction. Mostly for risk in the bank, you know, they look at the end of the transaction from the beginning. So if they've seen that there's a comfort end, and they're looking at a group who is knowledgeable in the transaction, they will avail. Because the strength of the cooperative also is also a comfort for the bank. Like I said, the cooperative drives the community. Like, for instance, apart from the cooperative, there's something interesting we also do. We call it Ajo. What I mean by Ajo is, let's say we have 20 members of cooperative, and some businesses, depending on capabilities and your business strength, some might say, oh, I want to do 200,000 every month. I can afford that profit set aside. I can afford 100,000. I can afford 50,000. And cooperative is also a way of saying, pay yourself. Most of our women in businesses, they don't have that culture of paying myself. So the cooperative is like, let me set aside this and pay myself. So we have 10 groups, 15 clusters. Imagine 10 people contributing 200,000 every month. Someone goes away with 2 million naira. And that's a lot to change the narrative. You don't need to go to the bank, apply for a facility, face conditions, and it's even interest-free.
So how do you make it easy for women? Because I hear you say 200,000, but when you talked about the women in the rural areas, how many of them can really afford that 200,000? Doesn't that still put pressure on an individual woman to be a part of the cooperative before she can access the loan we're talking about?
You know, the cooperative is called multi-purpose cooperative. Besides the fact that you're contributing into the cooperative for financial inclusion, there are some transactions that comes to the cooperative that are business-like that will enable you to enjoy from that transaction. And there are times, as a member of the cooperative, you have a request, maybe 300, 500,000, you want to cultivate your cassava farms, and you don't have the money to buy the input. You come to the farms, we avail you the money. To the cooperative, we avail you the money. We are not saying 200,000 as 200,000 is a different scheme entirely from the cooperative. I told you we call our joy is a side thing aside from the cooperative. We made the cooperative accessible and affordable for our women. 2,000 membership to join the cooperative, and they are all over. We have membership across the country. We have our members in Abuja, we have in Jos, we have in different states, and they are coming together to create that strong community to access funding. Most times, women don't need much.
So how much funding have you been able to access so far through this cooperative?
On ourselves, we've aggregated much, but we have not gone to the bank for any funding. Our objective...
Because I just want to know really how easy or how accepted you have been as a cooperative to the bank.
To the banks.
Because as you noted, and I think everybody knows by now, the bank they are commercial. They want to do business. Well, so they are not there for sentiment. Maybe the Bank of Agriculture, now that they're talking about recapitalizing them, they would be more lenient in their requirements?
The Bank of Agric has very capitalized. And like I said, the Bank of Agric is also not ready to deal with an individual. They'll be comfortable in dealing with a group and a cooperative. So my appeal and my message this morning is to create a strong financial inclusion for women, is that every group should try and form a cooperative, regardless of the sector where they operate. We're talking about agribusiness. We have a cooperative, a community of over 10,000 membership. For instance, in Lagos State, in Oyo State, in FCT, we have numbers, and the numbers are growing. And we do not, right now as I speak, we don't even, the way we structure our transaction, we don't even need the bank right now, because what we do is we get our members to come and invest in the scheme. They invest in the scheme and they see the end of it, and we move to another scheme. So what we're trying to build, now, you see, you have to take your destiny into your own hands. Because like I said, most commercial banks are not, they are profit-oriented. And I just want to use this opportunity to appeal to the women, because most of our banks are now being in the lead by women. Most of bank managing directors are women.
And they say they are generating some women-friendly policies.
And this is Women's Month, March. So I want to actually appeal to our women MDs that understand the importance of women at home, in business and in the sector, to try and be lenient to the women in terms of creating sustainable products that is accessible by them. Because most times, all the commercial banks have women desk, women this, women that, women bank, but in actual fact, real fact, they are not giving more, women out there are not accessing much of this funding. That's why we're trying to make ourselves formidable too, by creating a community of cooperative. Something happened about 3 years ago. I used to be the PRO from Nasima Export Group. Our chairman was Barrister Aware. We went on trade exhibition to Istanbul, Turkey. We came back with export contract. The banks couldn't fund it.
They couldn't, or they did not?
They did not fund it. Because most times they don't even, some staffs of the bank do not understand the dynamics of export. So what we did then was the chairman said, cooperatives here and there. And we gathered money from different cooperatives to fund the export of hibiscus flower, 10 containers to US. It was successful. And the payment came in, and the cooperatives were paid with income. So you don't wait for banks. You have the easy access to funding and financial inclusion is cooperative. So I want to encourage that people in different sectors, in different categories, different businesses should try and create a sustainable cooperative system for their financial liberation.
Okay. I want to make a plea to you people in the agri sector. So while we are big on increasing our production and all of that, we seem to be losing a whole lot to post-harvest losses, because it seems there's no much attention given to the value chain for preservation, for storage, for processing. Is it possible to have a cooperative? You know what I mean? Because numbers have it that about 50% of our production we lose it to post-harvest losses, sometimes moving it from the north to the south where majority of consumption is. We lose a whole lot of that. Is it possible to also prioritize that? That could help our food security situation.
As a matter of fact, the country is such that each crops concentrate in a particular area. So it's not like they're scattered and they are getting bad along the entire network. Let me give you an instance. In Jos, we produce so much Irish potatoes. Unfortunately, we do not have a processing centers in Jos that will convert our Irish potatoes to the packaged chips we have in supermarket. We still bring them in. So what we are also saying is infrastructure to create value addition for our excess production is very important. And that also can be addressed through the cooperative. Because the bank will not also want to fund a center and, who's going to manage it? No. But the cooperative comes together, and that's what we're doing. We've identified locations that we're working to create that system for value addition, machine processing for commodities. We have Sokoto, where we have abundant supply of onions. Onions preservation is short-lived as well. And there are times when onions are produced in abundance. When we have it in abundance, we should have machines in those locations to crush the onions, turn them into dry onions, and repackage it and export it. Do you understand? We have a lot of mangoes in Jos, in Kaduna. You go to Kaduna, you see mangoes falling here and there. We've also identified those places for cottage facilities to provide machines. So really, the only way to address this, apart from the cooperative, is having technology. Technology is very pivotal to food security.
So can the cooperative focus on that? I mean, it's also business. There is incentive for it. You talked about exports.
Absolutely. Even in Niger State, where they produce so much yams, you need to go to those locations and see how those yams rotten away. So we are also looking at, we are working with our women across the region to provide those centers. Do you understand? Because the yams now, we can convert the yams into yam flour, called that's poundo yam, in those locations. And the yams are very good. You can imagine having yams, this food, they don't stay for a long time. And then we also try to introduce a storage transportation, such that moving vegetables from the north, from Jos, you know, perishables in a cold storage down to the market. So we're also looking at that too, through the cooperative.
Please look very closely because we really need it. I mean, assuming that we don't even increase our production and yet we close the gaps of those harvests, I mean, we would have a lot of food, and having them off-season is also another one, yeah?
We have associations that are also adding value to that. They're looking at that, providing support for our farmers. So we're working as a team with those associations.
Okay, please. Thank you for that comfort. We hope that it will be accelerated. President of She Farmers Initiative, Mr. Mitokpe Andy, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we head to the global space, see what's happening outside the continent. Join us again. Welcome back. It's the global news segment now. We'll tell you what's happening in other parts of the world. We start from Japan this morning, where core consumer inflation in the country's capital has stayed above the central bank's target and has accelerated in March on steady gains in food costs, talking about food again, and then keeping alive market expectations of a near-term interest rate hike. Service sector inflation also perked up as rent prices rose ahead of the April start of Japan's new fiscal year, backing up the Bank of Japan's view that price pressures were broadening. The data will be among key factors that the Bank of Japan will scrutinize at its next policy meeting, which is April 30 and May 1, when the board is set to issue fresh quarterly growth and price forecasts. And nationwide core inflation accelerated above 3% in the first half of the year before slowing as the boost to import costs from the weak yen eases. And consumption, observers say, is weak. So the key is whether households can swallow further price hikes. The Tokyo Consumer Price Index, which excludes volatile fresh food costs, rose 2.4% in March from a year earlier, faster than a median market forecast for 2.2% increase. It accelerated from a 2.2 gain in February. A separate index for Tokyo that strips away both fresh food and fuel costs, closely watched by the Bank of Japan as a measure of domestic demand-driven prices, went up 2.2% in March from a year earlier, from 1.9% in February. The main driver, again, there is food. Then from there, we head to China, where the escalating trade war with the United States has prompted Beijing to further expand its ties with Central Asia as state-backed firms look to substitute U.S. imports and reroute their exports. In what appeared to be an attempt to downplay tariff worries, recently dozens of Chinese corporate representatives traveled to the neighboring country to explore partnership opportunities. China has established itself as a leading trade partner and top foreign investor to the 5 Central Asian nations, which includes Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, among others, a bloc that has been viewed as a key gateway for its Belt and Road Initiative, a major infrastructure program announced by President Xi Jinping during an official visit in 2013. The U.S., however, has been long sidelined in the region as we see that Washington aims to absorb the region into its sphere of influence, as stated in a State Department strategy document titled U.S. Strategy for Central Asia 2019 to 2025. But its efforts seem to have fallen short. Also, President Xi Jinping on Friday met with global executives and has made a case for investing in the country as Beijing focuses on reaching out to businesses amid escalating trade tensions with the U.S. And the president said that multinational companies had a big responsibility to uphold global order and that they needed to work hand in hand with China. Still in China, Chinese companies' latest earnings reports point to an improvement in consumer spending, though it's not necessarily back to pre-pandemic levels. E-commerce giants Alibaba and JD.com both said in their last several weeks that their China retail business saw faster year-on-year revenue growth in the last 3 months of 2024 than in 2023. And they think that consumption growth in a period of healthy recovery, but, well, not yet where they think it should be for consumer spending to return to pre-pandemic growth. Chinese companies' revenue growth likely needs to recover by double digits, and consumer confidence needs to improve, according to one of the market analysts. And Chinese policymakers have emphasized that boosting consumption is a priority this year. So far, authorities have expanded a trade-in subsidy program to include smartphones on top of home appliances and electric cars. In September, Beijing also signaled a shift in real estate policy by calling for a halt in the market decline. From China, we'll go to India, where that country has offered tariff cuts on imports of U.S. farm products like almonds and cranberries as a further concession to the United States, according to government sources. They hope to avert President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs, which is set for next week. Unlike China, Canada, and the European Union, India is actively seeking to appease the Trump administration and is open to cutting tariffs on over half of U.S. imports worth $23 billion. In a series of meetings in Delhi with Brendan Lynch, the assistant U.S. trade representative for South and Central Asia, India agreed to cut tariffs on bourbon, whiskey, and agricultural products such as almonds, walnuts, cranberries, and a whole lot more. The talks to fast-track negotiations is likely to be concluded today, Friday. And they say the talks are progressing well, and the bilateral trade pacts still in progress and will benefit both nations, according to Indian Trade Minister. And then we move to Thailand, where the country is aiming to reduce its trade surplus with the United States to $20 billion by importing more U.S. products. This is according to the Ministry of Industry. The United States was Thailand's largest export market last year, accounting for 18.3% of total shipments. That's about $54.96 billion. And head of Industry Ministry's Economics Office gave no time frame for this surplus reduction, but saying that governments would increase imports of agricultural produce such as corn, soybeans, and this may affect domestic products. The Commerce Ministry has said that Thailand had a trade surplus with the United States of $35.4 billion last year, while Washington has put its deficit with Thailand at $45.6 billion. So we'll see which way that goes for Thailand and the United States. And talking about the United States, tech billionaire Elon Musk, whom U.S. President Donald Trump has tapped to shrink the government, said that he would finish most of the work to cut $1 trillion in federal spending when his tenure ends in as soon as 64 days. Mr. Musk said that he was confident that his Department of Government Efficiency could find $1 trillion in saving, slimming current total federal spending levels of about $7 trillion down to $6 trillion. Musk is the world's richest person, was designated by the White House as a special government employee, which caps his work at 130 days. That means This period leading to the Doge operation could finish as soon as the end of May. And of course, we've been seeing a lot of cuts and drastic decisions by Doge. Doge estimates that it has saved U.S. taxpayers so far $115 billion as of March 24 through actions including workforce reductions, asset sales, and contract cancellation. However, the savings total published on the Doge website is unverifiable, and its calculations have been, they say it's been riddled with errors. Well, still in the United States now, one of the most popular acronyms in Silicon Valley at this time is SPV. Yes, a special purpose vehicle in tech stack land. It's a type of investment fund that typically involves concentrating all of its assets in one company. SPVs have blown up in recent years as investors clamor to get a piece of hot startups with valuations often in the tens of billions of dollars. But buyer beware, investors are warning of hidden fees, unclear rules, and ownership, as well as marketing that's driven by FOMO, or the fear of missing out. Traditional venture capital funds spread risk across a portfolio of startups with the understanding that most bets will fail and that one or two successes will pay back the fund several times over in an SPV, which is a fund manager. So buyers beware is the notion there from Silicon Valley. Now, the European Union is set to impose minimal fines on Apple and Meta platforms under its Digital Markets Act next week in a bid to avoid worsening tensions with the United States President Donald Trump. Apple will be fined and ordered to revise its App Store rules over antitrust concerns, while Meta will be fined and will be ordered to change its pay or consent model, and citing people that this may affect. Well, EU regulators will also close another investigation into Apple over the company's design of its web browser choice screen, with no more sanctions on tap. And then the companies can face up to 10% of their global turnover in penalties, which would have resulted in steep fines for both countries. So talking about the influence of President Trump on those United States companies, even though they're operating in the EU. Now, Alibaba, the e-commerce giant, is seeing growth in its core business and has become one of the leading artificial intelligence players in China and globally, competing with the likes of OpenAI and DeepSeek. Remember what DeepSeek did? Alibaba is now in favor with the Chinese government, and Alibaba's US-listed shares have quietly risen about 60% this year, adding more than $100 billion in 3 months. Imagine if you had an investment right there. I'm sure you'd be smiling at this time. Let's go to the UK now. Britons are saving an historical large portion of their disposable income, a sign that consumers are reluctant to spend in the face of a weak domestic economy and turbulent global backdrop. The savings ratio rose to 12% in the fourth quarter from 10.3% the previous 3 months. This is according to the Office for National Statistics. Well, it was the highest since 2010, excluding the pandemic. Prior to COVID, it stood at less than 6%. And the office confirms that the UK saw modest growth of 0.1% in the final quarter of 2024. Closeout in the UK now, households are accumulating a worryingly large amount of energy bill debt. That is actually worrying as they face some of the highest prices in the world at a time when government welfare reforms are set to push more into poverty. Juliana mentioned this yesterday. Well, consumers owe £3.7 billion for electricity and gas. That was for 2024, according to a report by the Committee of Public Accounts. The latest, they say that's more than double the debt recorded in 2021 when Europe's energy crisis was just starting to brew. Not so good for UK households at this time, and in spite of this, the government has its eyes set on cutting some of those welfare packages. I wonder how that will affect, or, well, we know it will affect them negatively, but Well, we'll talk about this in the coming days with Juliana, correspondent in London. But for now, I have to say thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning. This time, I do hope it was worth your time. I'll just leave you for a bit, gather some updates, and then I'll be back at 1 p.m. during Business Incorporated to give you a more robust and updated news from the world of business and economy. I'll be here with Aniti Edit. See you later.